Okay, let's get this started. What are we doing today? So, today I was going to talk about um, the degradation of femininity in our society and how we see it playing out in female behaviors. I've got a few videos we're going to take a look at, including some stuff from Rachel Wilson that's going to tie the feminist movement to witchcraft. And from there, we're going to move into some heavier topics like abortion and the recent Lindsay Clancy murders. So, well, I guess the murders themselves were a few years ago, but her trial is starting, so it's back in the news. Anyway, let's get started. The first video we're going to take a look at is from John Anderson Media, and it's featuring Louise Perry. We're just going to watch the whole thing.
2% of American
It's
women
short.
aged between 18 and 45 are running OnlyFans creator accounts. What is it that leads modern and apparently liberated women to go down this particular track?
Uh, that's a huge number of women. 2% might not be a very large percent, but there's 300 million women, 350 million people in America, something like that. Half of them are women. That's thousands and thousands and thousands of women who have opted to trade their sexuality on the open market like a commodity. And this is just the most obvious way in which we have degraded that which we used to hold sacred.
In life.
So at the societal level, it's the false ideas of sexual liberation offered by a lot of feminists, which I've written about at length, which tell women lies about the nature of sexual liberation and the desirability of foregoing monogamy and commitment and so on. I mean, this is all stuff that I've written about at length. I think.
And we'll circle back to this later because it absolutely is relevant throughout. But yeah, she's making the exact point that I'm trying to reinforce, that feminism has corrupted the idea of what femininity is supposed to be and replaced it with some sort of inverted, diseased version where they think that the way to empower themselves is to commodify themselves.
On the personal level, I think it's vanity and impulsiveness that leads to such a high proportion of young women being on OnlyFans. I think that the vanity comes from the wish to be seen as attractive by men, and attracting male sexual attention gives a sort of sugar rush of excitement and self-esteem.
And a cheap, easy dopamine hit. It's some of the easiest validation you can get as an even mildly attractive woman is to get simps to simp for you,
which is particularly attractive if you are low on self-esteem. The impulsiveness comes from that OnlyFans is so often sold, I think falsely, as a means to make easy money. The vast majority of people on OnlyFans don't make much in the way of money at all. There's a very intense Pareto distribution on OnlyFans where most people make practically nothing, and then there are a few very high earners who make all the money and become famous, and obviously promoted by OnlyFans because that it invites more content creators to join the platform, so that they're given this promise of, oh, maybe you'll become vastly wealthy by doing this.
Yeah, it's almost I I find it similar to sort of the meat grinder of war, except for with women. You just take young innocent women or maybe not so innocent, but you take young women and you feed them to this machine that turns them into online prostitutes. And yeah, it's less bloody, but it's still incredibly disgusting.
Easy job. And a lot of people don't think about the long-term effects of that. I mean, I always say that OnlyFans is to the marriage market as a criminal record is to the jobs market. It becomes more difficult to attract a long-term partner if you've been on OnlyFans or if you've had any kind of involvement in the sex industry. It's not like you can never find a partner, but it just becomes much more difficult because a lot of men will find that deeply unappealing in a potential wife. And so maybe
Yeah,
you're making
smart men
some
don't wipe
initial
up
cash,
horse.
probably not, but you're running very serious long-term risks in terms of your future relationships and also in terms of things like what if photos get sent to your employer or to your family or your children or your grandchildren run across these in the future? I mean, the risks of embarrassment and sadness are so high.
And it's not just embarrassment and sadness. There are a lot of career paths that are closed off to you once you have been outed as working in the porn industry. For example, nursing and teaching are both out. They both have morality clauses. So as soon as the public finds out that you have an OnlyFans account, you're going to lose your teaching job, you're going to lose your nursing job, as well as be embarrassed in front of all your friends and family.
For so little reward. But I think that it's a very good argument for why having social guardrails is a good thing, because in the past, no respectable woman would think of doing something like OnlyFans, being involved in the sex industry. I mean, the OnlyFans is worse than just prostitution because there's a permanent record of it. So the reputational risk is more enduring than.
Yeah, and I agree with their basic premise that we need to bring back strict social guardrails against this sort of behavior. Um, I know that pornography is supposedly protected by free speech. I don't know. It's a tough spot legally, but from a moral and ethical standpoint of view, it's very easy to just make it socially unacceptable and to, I guess, make slut shaming great again.
And in other ways that you can be involved in the sex industry in the past. No respectable woman would do such a thing because she would be so worried about running afoul of local opinion and of ruining her reputation. And I completely recognize that local opinion can be tyrannical, and falling afoul of the local church ladies was a very serious and frightening thing for people because they could be very cruel. But the reason that exists, that the reason that you have these local enforcement of Christian moral ideas is precisely to prevent this sort of thing happening, to prevent young women from giving in to their vanity and their impulsivity and making decisions that potentially wreck their lives.
Right. You got to put the carrot in front of them and the stick behind them. And in this context, the carrot is a happy marriage, or at least a functional marriage, with a family and a relatively stable life inside a stable society. And that's the carrot in front of them. And then the stick behind them is ridicule, being looked down upon by their female friend groups and the other aspects of society. It might not always be nice, but if we don't do anything, we just have a situation that's completely dysregulated and birth rates drop, divorces skyrocket while marriages drop, and the whole society crumbles out from underneath us all.
And I think a functional society just wouldn't permit OnlyFans to exist.
I agree. I don't know that we should ban it legally, but it should definitely stop existing one way or another. It sure as hell wouldn't make me sad if it went out of business, right? Okay, so I think she makes a pretty good foundational point about how the symptoms of the degraded feminine appear in our online spaces and general female behavior. 2.5 isn't the majority of women, and obviously, so we're not going to blame all women for what the 2.5% on OnlyFans are doing. However, that is a staggeringly large number of women who are doing it, and there are a whole lot more women who are supportive of that career path, even if they themselves choose not to follow it, which is you're still part of the problem if you're endorsing it. And we're going to have another look at another bit of Louise Perry. I'm not going to play this whole video. As you can see, it's quite long. We're just going to look at another few minutes of it.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
So, Louise, let's use the title of your book for a starting point for this conversation. You have made a case against the sexual revolution. In short, what is that case?
So my argument starts from the somewhat controversial recognition that there are some very important differences between men and women in terms of the physical differences, which ought to be obvious, but aren't necessarily. In the women are the ones who get pregnant. We're much smaller than men. We're much more vulnerable to violence from men in any kind of heterosexual encounter. We suffer all the consequences, negative consequences of hormonal birth control, etc. There are also psychological differences between the sexes, which I think there's very strong evidence to suggest are at least partially innate. They're average differences, so there are plenty of outliers, but they are quite profound. And one of the differences between the sexes on average is that men are much more interested in casual sex than women are, and are also more interested in things like watching porn, buying sex, doing all of the things that have become much more socially acceptable post-sex revolution.
And of course, this is the other half of the equation. She was just talking about the commodification, online prostitution in the form of OnlyFans, and how no functioning society would allow it. Well, the male half of that is we have to stop signing up for these sites. We have to stop visiting these sorts of dispensaries of the perverse. Getting rid of them legally would be a difficult uphill battle, but refusing to give them any time, attention, or money is met with much less resistance. That's just a matter of self-restraint.
And the argument that I make is that even though there are plenty of exceptions to this rule, at the population level, a culture of sexual hyperliberalism suits men much more than it does women in terms of their preferences. And
I would say it suits nobody.
Almost all of the negative consequences.
So, in summary, you're saying that the sexual revolution forced women to compromise on their sexual preferences and was tailored towards men's sexual needs. Is that it?
So the sexual revolution encouraged women to imitate masculine sexuality, is basically what it is. And I think that en masse is not good.
I would agree with that. It is weird how their idea of empowering women was to teach them to behave more like men. A bit paradoxical, if you ask me.
For women, for the well-being of women.
So, Ayala, you are a porn performer. Do you think that you are imitating male sexuality in your everyday work?
Yes. I mean, a lot of what you said, I don't disagree with. There's definitely porn is purchased mostly by men. Men are typically the primary consumers of the content that I create. There basically don't exist any female purchasers of porn. I mean,
I disagree. They're talking about porn as a visual medium, photos and videos. If you include the bean flicker novels, then women consume just as much porn as men do, almost 50-50 split.
Very, very, very tiny percentage. So yeah, it's pretty male oriented in regards to the actual paying money for it. I mean, a good chunk of women do in fact watch porn, but don't typically pay quite as much.
I think the Pareto distribution is what's going on in porn, right? That women will Like the mild to moderate porn consumers are more likely to be women, but the really heavy users are overwhelmingly male, and also sex buyers are overwhelmingly male.
Well, men are more inclined to send women money, especially in the context of sexual exchange.
It does even out a little bit if you include like consumption of erotic content at all. So if you are doing like
right,
like
so here you go.
Then it starts
the
to,
Bean
the
Flicker
gap starts to
novels,
close,
right?
Yeah.
So if we accept that porn is engaged with more by men and maybe it is driven towards a male viewer for obvious reasons, what's the problem with that? Louise, what is your issue with the male-dominated world of sexuality?
Well, it's not that it rots your mind as an individual, and then it rots society one level up.
So I think the problem you have with women being encouraged to imitate masculine sexuality. Let's go masculine, because obviously there's the average difference, but that not all men necessarily fall into this category. There's like a big range. There's actually a much bigger range for men, interestingly, than there is for women. As with many male and female traits, you have men who are off the scale in terms of their sociosexuality, which is the term psychologists use to describe desire for sexual variety. And then you have plenty of men who, behave like lesbians basically in their day-to-day life. So there's a massive range. The problem, though, I think for the vast majority of women with imitating masculine sexuality is, one, the physical consequences. The fact that we're the ones suffering all the consequences of hormonal birth control that have to be gone through in order to have casual sex. We're the ones having unwanted pregnancies, going through abortions, or having unexpected children arriving in our lives.
Yeah, they absolutely bear the lion's share of the risk when it comes to sex. Which is part of the reason. I mean, nobody should be advocating for casual sex, male or female, but certainly no woman should ever be obtuse enough to think that for them on their end, sex can ever be casual, because no form of birth control is 100% effective.
Like, at the end of the day, men can cut and run in a way that women can't. So there are all sorts of, very concrete ways in which women are bearing the brunt of negative consequences of casual sex. I think there's also the psychological dimension, which is a bit more difficult to talk about, but which I think is very profound. There are lots of ways in which male and female sexuality differs. One of the ways in which women are quite different from men is that we have a much lower sexual disgust threshold. It's much easier for us to sort of get the ick in a sexual encounter.
And as you can see, it goes on for a little bit. They're going to start talking about polyamorous relationships, and it's going to go off the rail from what we're focusing on in this video. But it's I like Louise Perry. She seems to have a good head on her shoulders. And yeah, their conclusion at the end, as I'm sure you can imagine, is the sexual revolution probably was a mistake. Whatever may have been gained from it that was positive has been vastly outweighed by all of the negatives. So, thank you to Unheard and Louise Perry for their contributions here. So next, we're going to take a look at a video by Basic Logic. It's also very short, just 4.5 minutes. I'm probably just going to let this one play through mostly.
Why are modern women
not
like
entirely.
this? Everywhere you look, there are self-proclaimed girl bosses chasing dominance and female empowerment, especially the growing number of middle-aged, childless career women. And yet, they remain the most depressed and anxious demographic.
Which just shows you they were sold the lie by feminism that the career is more important than the family. So they chased the career, got it, and missed out.
The Bible has an answer. In Genesis, both Adam, representative of men, and Eve, representative of women, are cursed, forced to endure the natural consequences of a sinful world. These curses hit us where we're most vulnerable, and are tailored to both sexes.
Now, I won't wax Gnostica too much here, but Gnostics have a different interpretation of the story of Adam and Eve. I won't go into the differences here, because his overarching point is the same, so I'll just let him make it.
They cause misery on an individual level, and on a collective scale have contributed to the collapse of civilizations throughout history. Genesis 3:16. To the woman he said, I will make your pains in childbearing very severe. With painful labor you will give birth to children. Your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you. What I just read was the NIV translation. But if I read the ESV translation, you'll notice the second half is different. Your desire shall be contrary to your husband, but he shall rule over you. The translations don't match and even seem to contradict. This is a telltale sign that there is a word here that the translators are struggling with. A trick when dealing with such a situation is to find the same words being mistranslated in another passage, and then infer from context. In our case, Genesis 4:7, which is about how sin is seeking to control Cain and motivate him to murder his brother. On screen, you're seeing both translations. They're a perfect match. Alternatively, you can also look at the original Hebrew, which I'm also putting on screen, proving it's a match. Therefore, from context, we know exactly what this hard to translate word means.
Scripture here.
To control, to usurp, to dominate someone's authority or decision-making power. Therefore, the curse of Eve could read as, your desire will be to usurp your husband's authority, but he shall rule over you. Remember,
of course, that's what we were talking about with the sexual revolution, which underneath the sexual revolution was feminism, and the plot to smash the patriarchy, man.
Will be to usurp your husband's authority, but he shall rule over you. Remembering that Adam and Eve are stand-ins for men and women as a whole, this means women will desire to usurp men's authority, but they shall never succeed. Men will always rule over them. This drive to usurp male authority and reject complementary rules is exactly what we see packaged today as egalitarian feminism. The Bible repeatedly affirms the authority of men. On screen, you'll see some verses showing exactly that. And yet, that has not stopped women throughout history from trying. Indeed, there are women who do not submit to their husbands, and often control them in turn. Does this make God a liar? Obviously not. She may reject her husband's or father's leadership, for example, but she will always end up submitting to some man.
And the women who reject their husband's authority and their father's authority are rarely happy, well-adjusted, fully functional women who thrive later in life. Usually they are bitter, angry, insufferable cunts who grow up to be crazy old cat ladies.
Whether that's her boss, a boyfriend, a guru, or cultural trends set by powerful men. She trades out a legitimate authority that's committed to her welfare for an illegitimate authority with no such obligations under the illusion of choice. Contrary to popular opinion, feminism is not new. Every time a society has tried it, the pattern is the same. Plummeting birth rates, rising social degradation, insecurity, and turmoil, eventually followed by a harsh masculine reaction that leaves women with fewer freedoms than before.
Which is more or less what we're starting to see already. If we follow the trends on X, there's a lot of talk about repeal the 19th and that sort of stuff. Now, the biblical interpretation of the male and female roles is pretty harsh, and there's aspects of it that I don't agree with entirely, but as I said before, the overarching point that he makes is more or less that men should be the head of the household, and that I agree with, even if I feel there's more nuance to it than standard Catholicism or Protestants would have.
Whereas most societies are designed around helping people deal with our flawed human nature, our modern societies are hell-bent on enabling it. Girls are pitted against boys in school. Movies and TV present men as incompetent idiots. Our society vilifies and demeans the natural role of women, and instead glorifies masculine endeavors. Fatherhood is reduced to nothing more than a paycheck. Older, childless women hide their depression and preach about how great their lives are to younger women, the complete opposite of what the apostles command, because misery loves company.
And that is incredibly damaging because women are known to seek the advice of other older women. They have a very strong in-group preference. We could go into why that is, but we won't. The point is that women tend to listen to other women. And so when you have bitter old future crazy cat ladies who are giving out bad advice to the younger generations, it's a really bad situation.
And as a result, the Word of God is reviled and labeled misogynistic for not affirming modernity's delusions. If you want to fix this, it starts with you. Stop listening to preachers who never risk offending your sensibilities. Stop treating church like a weekly motivation and affirmation session. Forget how offensive something sounds. Focus only on how true it is. Why are
Yep. And there's another content creator, another channel called Effective Purpose, that dives pretty deep on how most modern churches do not hold women accountable, and they sort of simp, institutionalized religious simping. But the point that Basic Logic makes is that there is a biblical, and then also a psychological, and then also a societal, and then familial, and then personal foundation for the feminist urge to usurp male authority and the importance of male authority maintaining in spite of that. So thank you to Basic Logic. I definitely recommend you subscribe to him if you aren't already. Okay, and we're going to play this next video in 2 short parts. It is an interview with Rachel Wilson. And we're going to play the later part first and then jump back a little bit here.
When you talk about this witch that's a scholar, right, you're actually providing things that they're saying themselves. Like, it's like you're not misrepresenting, you're representing accurately what they themselves are saying about themselves.
Sorry. And she's going to be talking about the direct connection between feminism and witchcraft. And you'll see right here in the title, feminism is the political arm of witchcraft.
Yes. And so I'm a little curious about what the reaction is.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because just yesterday I got an email from a group in Turkey of esoteric occultists who love my work and think that I am giving them the proper credit for women's liberation that they don't often get. I have I know, it's so funny, but I have witches and Satanists who are big fans of my book because they're like, yes, she's right, that we deserve the credit for abortion, for breaking up the family. Like, this is all, we wanted to do this. This was the goal.
I have not independently verified any of that, but assuming she's telling the truth, which I have no reason to suspect her of lying, that gives both the Christian and the satanic sides agreeing that feminism comes from a very, very dark place, which makes sense when you see the end result here, over a century after its inception, and just how ugly it has really gotten.
I'm not some crazy religious lady out here telling you everything's the devil like Bobby Boucher's mom and the water boy. I'm just telling you what they say. And what they say is, yes, we wanted to destroy the family because it's patriarchal. Yes, we wanted abortion on demand without any restriction. Yes, we want depopulation. We want women to have power through, destroying men's seed when and where they see fit.
Which is exactly what the last video was talking about, with their sort of innate psychological desire to usurp male power. The only really effective way they can do it is to control which of our offspring survive and which don't.
Women get to decide if and when a man gets to have a child, and that's the source of their power. And they think that not just politically, but spiritually, it's both. So there's a famous witch called Zuzana Budapest, and she came here from the Czech Republic right after World War
It's a
II.
good name, though.
Isn't it?
It's a good
Isn't
name
it a
for a
good one?
witch.
She's still around actually,
Oh,
and
okay.
she does seances and tarot card readings and stuff like
Yeah.
that on Facebook Live. And she was cursing Donald Trump, you know, throughout the last decade live on Facebook. She
There
was
you go.
leading a lot of that with where the witches were cursing him. She's famous because when she moved here, she was in San Francisco in the 1960s, and she was the one who got the courts to overturn rulings that made witchcraft illegal under the Religious Freedom Clause. And
Right.
so witchcraft was legalized basically nationwide by the 1970s
Should
because
not
of
have
her
been.
and because she used these tactics. And in her writings, she said that feminism is the political arm of a spiritual movement that has been with us since human beings have been around. She says witchcraft is ancient. We've always had it. It's our spiritual lineage, and feminism
Well,
is just the
unfinished.
political arm of witchcraft.
Okay, so we'll stop this video there. Okay. So there it is, bit more or less, and I do believe that Rachel has done her homework. I consider her to be a reliable source for this sort of information. So right out of the horse's mouth, feminism is the political arm of witchcraft, and it is specifically designed to undermine the patriarchy, and it stretches so far back in time that it predates recorded history, predates the writing of the Bible, predates writing at all. It ties it into the human psyche. And this is the same video, just much earlier in the video.
This is Jonathan Pedro. Welcome to the symbolic world.
Hello, everyone. I'm here with Rachel Wilson. I imagine that most people that are watching this know who Rachel is. She has written a book on occult feminism, but she is also quite active online in the debate space. You know, some know her husband is Andrew Wilson, and both of them are kind of like a tag team debaters on X and on the different platforms. But
I know it's sort of awkward to have play a chunk out of the middle of the video and then cut backward, but it'll make sense here in a minute.
You know, Rachel and I, we ended up meeting with her husband and a bunch of people in Dallas, and we thought it would be a good idea to talk about her book, but then also about, you know, the trick that the modern world has played on us with feminism and the beauty also of motherhood and of being a wife and being a woman in general. And so, Rachel, thanks for talking to me.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on, Jonathan. It was so great meeting you, and this is the kind of show I really like to do. So I was very excited that you wanted to talk to me. So thank you.
Well, of course. Well, because one of the things on my channel, I think in the same way you do with another tack, is I've also noticed that there's something about the modern world which is actually anti-feminine.
Yeah,
and that
absolutely.
The feminist movement is actually a trick there because it's actually anti-feminine. It's like tricking women into believing that they should be men. And so I spent a lot of time trying to help people see the beauty of feminine symbolism in scripture, in the tradition. And so when I saw what you were doing, I thought this is exactly the case. But the thing that really wowed me a little bit is your book, where you trace let's say the origins of feminism to occult practices. So maybe we can start with that. Tell us a little bit what that's about.
Yeah, well, when I started writing the book, I didn't think that's where it would lead. I thought I was going to be writing mostly about the funding of the 19th Amendment and the industrialist progressive era folks who kind of pushed all that stuff to the forefront and funded the first wave, right? And as I was going through and doing research, which I took 2.5 years, and kind of meticulously profiled the lives of most of the big players involved, and even some of the lesser known but very influential writers of the time, that was kind of my way of going about it. Was
2.5 years. So she's done plenty of homework.
But very influential writers of the time. That was kind of my my way of going about it was, let's go back and read what people were writing in the late 1700s, in the early 1800s, when this started. What was their mindset? Where were they coming from? Where did they get these ideas, and why did they think they were important? I really wanted to understand the mind of those people. So I read a lot of their
A
own
dark
writings,
place.
their autobiographies and their biographies, and I kept noticing this thread time after time after time, that almost all of these influential women, and even the men who were around them, had
Simps.
dabbled in some type of occult practice, whether it was straight up Luciferianism, whether it was theosophy, spiritualism. There were a lot of different utopian cults that emerged out of the Second Great Awakening in America, and
this is one of the main reasons that Gnosticism gets such a bad rap, because it gets erroneously identified as the foundation for theosophy and all this New Age crap. It's not, but I'll save that for another video.
there was a lot of thoughts that came from that camp, and I remember going to Andrew and saying, this is crazy. I've got to, like, this has to be the theme, because it's the one thread that I'm finding through all these women. There was two things that almost all of them had in common. One was the occult practice stuff, and the other was abandoning their family. Almost all these women, there was a few that didn't, but a lot of them would abandon their husband and children to pursue this activism.
Which shows that the connection between feminism and the abandonment of children and marriage and being a wife and a mother has been directly connected since the very beginning.
Even in the 1800s, which I thought was pretty crazy.
So are you telling me that witches are real? Is that what you're saying, Rachel?
Yes. So, like, what a good example would be Matilda Joslyn Gage. She was very active in the suffragette movement. She helped write the Woman's Bible, and she had a very influential work called Woman, Church, and State. And she was extremely anti-Christian. Thought Christianity was the mechanism for enslavement of women for all of human history. And she happened to be the mother-in-law of L. Frank Baum, who wrote The Wizard of Oz and popularized the idea of the Good Witch.
Right.
And so she was in the Theosophical Society, I imagine, just like Baum. All right, interesting.
That's how he got into that stuff. He lived with her for quite a while with his wife.
He got in it through her.
Yes. Yeah.
Huh.
And he was very, very much influenced by her. They were very close. They lived together for several years. And she kind of got him. She spent a lot of time with, like, Iroquois Indians too.
So this stuff has been working its way into the public consciousness, since day one.
Years. And she kind of got him. She spent a lot of time with, like, Iroquois Indians too, and studying kind of the Iroquois pagan religions, and she thought those were great. And theosophy is nice because it's kind of like a choose your own buffet of, occult spirituality. You can kind of pick and choose from all the different things.
Yeah, it's like proto New Age, really. The New Age movement comes kind of straight out of theosophy and does what theosophy doesn't do, which is decentralizes it, makes it just pick and choose whatever you want.
Theosophy's just
I call it proto. I called it proto New Age. I think in the book.
Oh, you did.
They're being nice. Proto New Age. Proto New Age retardation.
And Baum that's where he got the idea of the Good Witch, because up until then there was no such thing. But we see that carry through the whole 20th century. Like, if you want to talk about symbolism, we have The Wizard of Oz at the beginning of the 20th century as a very popular book with Glenda the Good Witch. And then we have sitcoms coming out later in the 60s, like Bewitched.
Yeah.
And then even later you get Sabrina the Teenage Witch and all this stuff. And you get the development of the concept of white magic inside the actual occult practice itself, which I can tell you right now, there's no such thing as white magic. If you're making bargains with the forces and beings that control reality, you are not dealing with anything divine or holy.
And this idea of the Good Witch was based on Matilda Joslyn Gage and her hatred for Christianity that she was not shy about. I mean, she was one of the
there's no good witch.
Major voices for separation of church and state, and this idea that church and state are opposed to one another and should have nothing to do with each other, and that Christianity was just a tool for oppression. So pretty
is she
surprising
one of
stuff.
those people that abandoned her family?
kind of. I think she ended up divorced.
Shocking.
And she advocated early on for abortion as a like ritual. So I don't know if maybe
Wait, as
the
a
way.
ritual?
Yes, like a lot of the pagan religions, in fact, when they overturned Roe v. Wade, there were a lot of Native American associations and groups that protested it based on their idea that abortion is a religious right. So this is like a common thing. New
What are they,
Zealand, same thing.
Canaanites?
Pagan New Zealand, like indigenous religions, believe that abortion can be ritualized and used for magic purposes. And so, based
I'm
on the
sure it
freedom of
can. I'm
religion
sure
clause
it
in the
can.
U.S. Constitution, a lot of Native American groups opposed the overturn of Roe v. Wade, and they said, "You can't. Abortion is a sacrament for us. You can't outlaw it."
I am not steeped in witchcraft, but you don't need your unborn child to be a sacrament. Whatever it is you're trying to do. Remember I just said how when you're dealing with the forces that can shape reality, you're never dealing with anything that is good or holy or divine. Whatever it is that you think you need to accomplish, if the price for it is your unborn child, the price is too high, and whatever it is you're trying to do is probably better left undone. Anyway, back to the video.
And she was early on, got that idea from the Iroquois and was writing about it, in the 1800s in America.
That's
So,
wild. And so
yeah.
what do you remember what it is that she thought it would do? Like what kind of effect, what did the ritual bring about?
Well, they had this idea that, in Native American religion, not all, there's so many and
Yeah.
there's a lot of diversity, but one thread they have in common is they do have this idea, like most other religions. It's not patriarchal. It tends to be where you have a strong female spiritual side, you have goddesses. And so female empowerment in the spiritual sense is really important to them. And
which is why the polemics and the evangelists and the apologists all flip out on me when I start talking about Sophia, because they think I'm talking about one of these freak-ass, perverse, feminist goddesses. But she's not. But again, a different topic for a different video at a later time.
women don't have a monopoly on physical force, but they do have a monopoly on reproduction, and they think that it's like a sacred thing for women to be able to decide who and when, who gets born and when those people get born. And that if for any reason the woman doesn't want to do that, or thinks, it could be anything from, like, they think the child is cursed or something like that, they may abort it. If they think that it needs to be a sacrifice to the gods because there was a bad harvest, maybe we need to use ritual abortion in that case.
Right.
There were a lot of different ideas that people had about it, I guess, but Gage in particular wrote about it as this beautiful idea of women's empowerment and a way for women to take control back, for them to have a sense of power in society.
Which is exactly, again, what the basic logic video was talking about. It's their way to assert or usurp male authority and male power that is given to us by God or nature or whatever you want to attribute creation to. It has decided that men get to be bigger and stronger and on average smarter. We get to be the ones that go out and fight against reality on the day-to-day, in the rain, the snow, the scorching heat. Anyway. So that's it from Rachel Wilson. We're going to move on now. And over to TikTok. We're going to watch this little bit of a clip from the Postpartum podcast, which I am sure is just a gold mine of corrupted female psychology.
A better way to love my baby and to protect my baby from a childhood in a world that would not be kind to it, that I could not. I knew that whatever protection I could give my baby was most likely going to be insufficient because of the circumstances of that pregnancy. Got the abortion because...
Okay, so sorry. So she got an abortion because she didn't think she could protect the child adequately once it was born. The mental gymnastics there are unbelievable. The people in the comments have at least thought of something to say. I myself am flabbergasted at the paradox of I had to kill my child to protect it. But these are the sorts of thought processes that people start to have when their psychology has been corrupted, stood on its head, basically. And so instead of protecting her child and giving it life, she decided to protect her child by letting it be murdered. Thumbs up for Josh, or heart to Josh Wood for bringing that to us. And in that same vein, we see here the governor of Massachusetts signing that bill that allows abortion up until the day of birth, basically. So what is clearly yeah, well done. Let's all clap. I don't even know. It's going to take me a moment to compose myself with this one because there's a lot to say here about a group of women standing around and applauding for legislation that unashamedly allows for the murdering of children. As you can see, it's stirred up quite the controversy online, and this is just one post. Anywhere that this got posted, it was stirring up an absolute storm, as it should. You take the divine feminine, you corrupt it through feminism, and you end up with this crap as the result. And it doesn't stop there. Full term, next you'll be defending killing toddlers. Literally no one would say that. Well, ha ha ha, so funny a meme. I mean, of course, that's exactly what happened. Because here we have Lindsay Clancy, who murdered 3 of her children. She says she did it. Her attorney says she did it. The prosecutor says she did it. But for some reason, women are rallying around her and support anyway. And Homath here points out that she isn't particularly strikingly ugly, but boy, she sure is evil looking. There's a certain soullessness. So, gentlemen, if your girlfriend has soulless dead eyes, maybe don't marry her. Anyway. As I was saying, the women rallying around her. And talking about Carmelo Anthony for white women. Exactly. Hearts for Lindsay.
Or now if you'll ever have this many women in one place at one time who may understand all of us on a level that others don't, so.
Oh yeah, let's all be understanding of the women rallying in support of child murder. The infanticide rally. One more example. Here's them literally clapping and cheering for her as she's being transported. Ridiculous. The woman murdered 3 children, and instead of being condemned, she's being celebrated for it. So we've indeed completely and fully inverted what femininity is supposed to be.
They should be commended.
One more example.
I've had it with you.
Oh my God, they
and
should be
your
commended. They
sexism
didn't
and
kill their children.
misogyny.
She's a
Sexism.
women are caring. These are man-hating
Holding women accountable for murder is sexism and misogyny.
women that are standing outside. This is what it's about. They think the husband did it. They're crazy. They've lost their mind.
Do you know why they're
waving for a murderer?
Do you know why the woman is in a wheelchair? Did you even notice that she's
Couldn't care less. She's a murderer.
Because she jumped out the window after this happened.
So she should have. I'd have pushed her. They say that Lindsay was in.
Yeah, I don't know what her jumping out of the window has anything to do with anything. So she was having a psychotic episode. Most people who commit horrible crimes do so in the midst of a psychotic episode. It's not an excuse.
Psychosis. I think these women are suffering from psychosis.
No shit.
Too many true crime Netflix dramas. You know, this was.
I think he's very right. I don't think it's just the true crime in Netflix. I think there is a fundamental society-level sickness that has infected everybody, but is expressing itself particularly grossly through inverted feminism right now.
Was an incredibly privileged woman, incredibly wealthy. She had a nanny, and she's still complaining that she needed help. She could not have got more help from the system that she already have received. This is a murderer who strangled her children one by one. One of the boys ran away, and she chased him down and killed him.
Laurie Watkins.
What you just said was absolutely disgusting.
Thank you.
You should be ashamed.
Well, it was the
of yourself.
truth.
And
It is a disgusting thing that happened.
It's true.
You clearly don't care, so pipe down.
I don't care. And by the way, men watching this, if you have a woman sat next to you on the sofa who is defending this murderer, you got to think deeply about this. I've seen weddings.
So we need to have some empathy with.
Talk to your women and find out what are they thinking. They're defending this woman. It's
I don't think anybody's defending what she did, but you can have empathy for what she went through and how she.
I know many.
No, people are absolutely defending her, and they are defending what she did. They're trying to be covert about it, and they're failing. But yeah, you can see how upset she gets at this prospect of a female being held accountable for her horrible, horrific actions. However, the point of all of this is not that women suck and we should just shit and trash on women. In fact, both sides of society need to do better, men and women both. So I'm going to end or start drawing towards a close here by highlighting the case of this wonderful woman, Emma Scholes, who, as you can see here, if I don't click away, ran back into her flaming house and rescued all 6 of her children. She got burned over 93% of her body, probably should have died. That is extensive, but she managed to pull through. So, good for her. I'm glad that she survived. I'm glad that all 6 of her children survived, and that she continues to shine as an example that there are still good women, good wives, good mothers in the world who are not soulless evil monsters, but who embrace their sacred duty and charge fearlessly into danger to save their children. And it sickens me. You know, it's almost bordering on proof of the societal disease right here. So we need to fix this. Not just, you know, as individuals, but as individuals, as small groups, as nations, as a global community. We need to figure out why this is happening and make sure that these numbers get flipped so that the woman who rescues her whole family and gets horribly injured gets the recognition she deserves, and the baby killer gets the electric chair like she deserves. So yeah, be more like this lady, women, and be more like Shu. Shu just posted this not too long ago. Look how happy Shu is. Look how happy your kid is. Look how happy that young man is. Actually, it might be their daughter. I don't know. I don't know if it's a boy or girl. But anyway, the point is that Shu is not a slave to the patriarchy. She's definitely in charge and running her own life. And now she's added motherhood to that. She hasn't had to give up her freedom or her autonomy. All she's had to do was fold in one more beautiful aspect of life and just win that much harder. I'm just going to leave that there for a moment. What's Smug's talking about the My Little Pony toy she gave to her niece. All right, yeah, cool. Nice toy, Smug. So in conclusion, if you're a female, stop being a foid and start venerating motherhood as sacred. If you are a male, stop being a gooner and start venerating motherhood as sacred. And if you are one of the despicable feminist witches that are trying to undermine society, I don't know. I guess you should probably stop pretty soon, because just nobody's ever said that there isn't going to ever be another witch hunt. I don't know. I don't advocate for violence, and I certainly wouldn't want anything more violent to happen, but violent stuff is happening. So it seems unavoidable. And if the only way to get it to stop is to re-strengthen the guardrails, I mean, we got to do what we got to do to protect the children and our society. That's all I have for today. Thank you very much for listening. I love you all very much. Please like, subscribe, comment down below, and I will talk to you again in the next video.